Welcome to Ground Control, and look what I have. I have a larger chuck glider, and it's made out of EPP foam. Alright, so if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I converted one of those little 48 centimeter chuck gliders back when they were inexpensive. I bought, I think, a 4 or 5 pack of them. I've only converted one of those so far with a pusher motor on it, but it turned out really well. It's just bank and yank. It doesn't have a rudder. It has 2 independent aileron servos and elevator. If you guys have watched any of the flight videos of that chuck glider, it is awesome. It's an awesome little chuck glider. And I thought about converting another one of those, but I thought, man, I'd really like to get my hands on a larger chuck glider. And so I have been searching for one for a very long time that, number one, didn't cost a fortune to purchase, and number two, didn't cost a fortune to have shipped to me. Well, I finally found one. I have been so envious of those guys in Europe that are always getting those larger Lidl chuck gliders to convert. So I couldn't believe how inexpensive this was. And I should have pulled the trigger on 2 of them. I thought about pulling the trigger on 2 of them, but I wasn't sure what it was going to look like when I got it, or what kind of shape it was going to be in when I got it. So I only pulled the trigger on 1, but I'm going to go back today and pull the trigger on a second one. So anyway, it's advertised as a 99 centimeter wingspan EPP chuck glider. And I measured it from wingtip to wingtip. And it came out to 98.5 centimeters, which comes out to 38.75 inches. So just shy of a 39-inch wingspan. You got to allow a little variation, because what I've read on the EPP foam, in the processing of EPP foam and the molds, is they tend to expand a little bit after they take them out of the mold, and so I'm sure it's kind of guesswork. And I'm sure they don't all come out exactly the same. So 98.5 centimeter, I think, was close enough to 99 centimeters that it's definitely as it was advertised. Now, I have taken the ballast weight out of it, but I was looking at it, and they had a picture, I think, of the ballast weight underneath the canopy, and that fits nice and snug. Now, I've removed the 2 ball bearings that were in there. I had 2 of them. And I looked at, like the little 48 centimeter chuck glider I had. I think it had just a single ball bearing in it for a ballast weight, and I weighed it, and it was obviously a lot smaller than this one. So I assumed that these were probably going to be somewhere around 15 to 16 grams of weight, each one of them. And so I took them out of the canopy after it arrived, and I weighed those, and they are 16 grams apiece, so that's 32 grams of ballast weight that you can knock off of this airframe. And I'll get the other numbers for you here in a minute on the all-up weight on this. I think without the ball bearings in it, it was like 86 grams. 86 gram airframe without the ball bearings in it. So I wanted to let you guys know about this, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of you who are going to be interested in it. Okay, so now are you ready for me to tell you what it costs to have this delivered to my door? I mean, for the price of this, plus having it delivered to my door, less than $12, guys. So I knew there was going to be a lot of you that were going to be interested in this. So I have a link to this in the show notes. Less than $12 to my door. I couldn't ship this for less than $12 without the cost of the glider. So phenomenal price on that. This vendor must have bought these at like an auction or something for pennies on the dollar, because I don't even know how they could afford to ship it for that, much less less than $12 for the price of the glider and the shipping. Yeah, so I'm definitely getting back online and ordering another one today. Okay, so now I'll tell you how it was shipped. It was shipped in a bag. Everything was packed pretty tightly in the bag, and then that bag was shipped in a shipping bag. And I assumed that's the way it was going to be shipped, which is why I waited until I received it before I pulled the trigger on a second one. You know, 20/20 hindsight, I didn't know. I didn't want to waste my money if it was going to be all mangled when I received it, you know, if I ordered 2 of them. So the horizontal stabilizer just slots in. The main wings have interlocking foam pieces. Let me see if I can push this out so I can show you without breaking it. Okay, so it has these little interlocking things. So I'm not sure if I'm going to glue those together or if I'm just going to leave them that way so I can break it down and put it in the truck and take it out to the field. Since it came in a bag, I did have some warping of the foam, which I'll explain to you about. Okay, so I've got one wing. If you look at the right wing, it seems to hang a little bit lower than the left wing. And then if you look at the vertical stabilizer, if you can see it on camera, it's a little canted over to your right, my left. And let me see the tail. The tail actually looks straighter now after I put the horizontal stabilizer in it. But the tail was actually warped a little bit to my right, to your left. Okay, so I tried straightening out some foam not too long ago on one of my aircraft. I can't remember what, maybe it was the Viper, I can't remember. But I was trying to straighten the nose out on it, and I was using a heat gun to do it. And even on the low setting, the heat gun just gets too hot. And so it gave it that alligator skin. So somebody had recommended, I've used the water method in the past, but if you get the water too hot, you get the same effect, you get the alligator skin. And I've done that too with the water. So somebody mentioned something about using a hair dryer. You know, a hair dryer won't get nearly as hot as my heat gun does. So if any of you have any tips on using a hair dryer for straightening out this foam, let me know in the comments section, because that's what I'm going to try to use this time to straighten out the foam. Now the foam is not warped a whole lot. I think it's going to be pretty easy to straighten out. So that's why I'm going to pull the trigger on the second one. I think it is well worth a little bit of effort to get the foam straightened out for the price that this costs to have it delivered to my door. Okay, so now I will tell you about what my plans are for this and what my plans are for the second one. Okay, so it's going to be a low priority. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but I've been adding up, I've been selecting the components already. Before I ever ordered it, I had the components already selected on what I wanted to do with it. What I plan on doing with this is I still have 2 of those BetaFPV 2004 3000 kV motors, and I absolutely love those motors. And they're pretty lightweight. They're like 16.5 grams each, and they got a lot of torque. So what I'm planning on doing with this is mounting one of those on each wing so that I have dual tractor motors. I'm planning on installing 2 12 amp ESCs using the back off of one of them to power the receiver and the servos. And using 5 gram servos, 2 independent 5 gram servos for the ailerons, 1 5 gram servo mounted in the fuselage for the elevator, and I might be able to get away with using like a 3.2 gram servo for the rudder to save a little bit of weight, and then using a standard 6-channel lightweight, you know, compact receiver in it, and using my using 2 Gemfan Hurricane 4024 props. And I plan on running this on a 2S to begin with. But I wanted to get 12 amp ESCs so that if I decided to use a 3S on it, you know I'm going to fly with a 3S too, right? But with a 2S LiPo. And look, I was looking at the weight of a 2S 850 milliamp hour 50C LiPo. And with all the components, plus a little bit of padding, you know, because I'm going to have to put a carbon spar in it and Velcro and all that stuff, I should be just under 250 grams on a 2S setup. But if the 850 milliamp hour 2S, which weighs approximately 53, 54 grams, if I can't get it below 250 grams with that LiPo, I can always use one of my GNB 550 milliamp hour 2S LiPos, which weigh about 20 grams lighter than my 850s, and then I'm sure I'll be able to keep it below 250 grams. So I think with a smaller battery, I'm not going to have any problem keeping this below 250 grams and still be able to get a considerable amount of flight time, because it's a glider, you know. I'm only going to be on the throttle part of the time doing aerobatics with it, and the rest of the time I'm going to be gliding and cruising around with it. And I think this is going to be a pretty high performance little glider. And of course with gliders, they hold on to a lot of their energy and they don't take much, you know, throttle when you're just cruising around with them. So I think even with a 2S 550 milliamp hour LiPo, I think it's going to be a sufficient LiPo to get considerable amount of flight time out of it. You know, with the two motors that I selected, with the props I selected on the 2S, at full throttle, my peak amps for the two motors combined is only 11.4 amps. So, and like I said, you're going to get a lot of flight time out of it, even with the smaller 2S LiPo. Well, the reason I'm choosing the 12 amp ESCs, like I said, is because I would like to also be able to fly it with a 3S. Now, everything being the same ESCs, same motors, same props, all I have to do is switch out the 2S LiPo and put a 3S LiPo in it. With the 2S LiPo, looking at my thrust numbers with those motors and those props, and assuming that this plane is right at 250 grams, I should have a 1.5 to 1 thrust to weight ratio on a 2S. That should give me excellent climb and power on a high performance glider that cuts through the air extremely well and holds on to a lot of its energy. But if I put a 3S in it, not changing anything but just the battery, assuming that the 3S LiPo is 20 grams heavier than the 2S LiPo I'm using, so 270 grams all that way. With the thrust numbers that I have on those two motors and those two props on a 3S LiPo, I should have between a 2.5 to 1 to 2.6 to 1 thrust to weight ratio. That means vertical acceleration with this glider, so you know I'm going to be testing it with a 3S LiPo as well. So all the components that I have selected for this glider, I have links to in the show notes, as well as this chuck glider. I'm going to pull the trigger on 2 more of them today. So if you guys are interested in it, I have yet to come across a glider this size that is this inexpensive to purchase it and to have it shipped to me. Less than $12, free shipping. I don't know how they do it, but I'm glad they do it. So I'll leave you with that. I wanted to make this first look at this because I knew there was going to be a lot of you that were going to be interested in it. Because if you're, especially if you're in the US, you're in the same boat I'm in, you can't get the LiDAR gliders. You can't get those large LiDAR gliders like those guys in Europe can get. So now we have an option. And I think this is going to be absolutely outstanding. Now I wanted to remind you before I go, when it comes with a set of decals, I'm not going to put any decals on it until I get it all straightened out, and then I'll put the decals on it. But speaking of straightening it out, if any of you have used a hairdryer before to straighten out this foam and you were able to do it without creating any alligator skin on the foam, please let me know how you did it. I would be very interested in knowing that, because I would like to keep it nice and smooth after I get it straightened out. So anyway, don't forget, links to all that stuff is in the show notes. Sub 250 gram 2S with a 1.5 to 1 thrust to weight ratio. With a small 3S, a 2.5 to 2.6 to 1 thrust to weight ratio. It would be an absolute beast either way. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.